Bringing you the news, I'm Kumar Singha, and here are your headlines.
India imposes tariffs on 28 US goods as global trade war heats up. President and his Russian counterpart discuss about the sanctions imposed by the US on certain goods imported from Russia to Sri Lanka. The inside story of the agreement on the East Container Terminal at the Colombo port. Payment anomalies of over 500,000 pensioners to be removed from 1st of July.
On to your top story this evening, Buddhists across the globe mark the Poson Poya today. Most celebrations in Sri Lanka were centered around Anuradhapura, Mihintale and Polonnaruwa as King Devanampiyatissa met Arahat Mihindu Thera in Mihintale. Various religious activities were carried from dawn today at the 8 sacred religious locations.
People were adhering to various customs and beliefs before Buddhism was gifted to Sri Lanka. It was the great Arahat Mihindu, the son of Indian Emperor Dharma Mahavihara, who gifted Buddhism to the wayward Sri Lankans who were worshipping trees, stones and fire. The Indian Emperor Dharma Mahavihara, also known as Ashoka the Great, who waged war across India, embraced Buddhism after seeing the repercussions of war in his land. As a result of that, steps were taken to spread Buddhism across 9 countries in the world. Mihindu Mahathero, who gave his wonderful gift to us on the 236th year since the inception of Buddhism, where we learned to spread kindness instead of hatred to our fellow human beings, Mihindu Mahathero first preached King Devanampiyatissa standing on the Missaka mountain in Anuradhapura. The conversation between them, which started with Devanampiyatissa answering a question posed by Mihindu Mahathero, ended with King Devanampiyatissa being the first king who embraced Buddhism. From there onward, the light of Buddhism emanated across the island, and all the people gathered around a vision where peace was against violence and kindness was against hatred. The group led by Prince Arita commencing the Buddha Sasana and Sanghamitha Thero bringing the Sri Mahabodhi to Sri Lanka were 2 of the biggest milestones following Mahindagamana. Today can be marked as a day that the people of Sri Lanka started a lifestyle based on the 5 pillars, also known as the Panchashila. Nahi verena verani, sammanti the kudachanan, averene sammanti, esadammo sanantano. Hatred is indeed never appeased by hatred in this world. It is appeased only by loving kindness. This is an ancient law.
Religious observances were held in several parts of the island in line with the Poson Poya Day today.
A large number of devotees engaged in religious observances in Mihintale and at Datamastana, or the 8 places of worship, including the Jayashree Mahabodhi. A Buddha Puja was also held at the Shakyamalake opposite the head office of the Capital Maharaj Organization Limited today. The puja was organized by the staff and students of the Maharaja Institute of Management. Mihintalawata Sirasa was held this year as well, sponsored by our sister channel Sirasa TV. Amisa and Pratipatti Puja were held during the program.
A number of dansas were also organized across the island today in line with the Poson Day celebrations.
The youth in Vennoruva Alawa organized a rice dansala in the area. Traditional food items were served at an old village house. An ice cream dansala, which was organized by a group of tourists, was held opposite the tourist police post in Mirissa. More than 50 foreign tourists from Australia, Russia, New Zealand and several other countries have organized this dansala to exhibit the situation in Sri Lanka has returned to normalcy following the April 21st attacks. Another dansala organized by the residents of the Met Sadasevana housing complex in Paliagoda was held this afternoon. Another dansala was held in the Siambalagoda area in Polgasovita. The dansala, which was organized by the youth in Siambalagoda, was funded by the area residents. This was held for the 15th consecutive time today. A rice dansala was held at the Rasvihara Mahavihara in Nehatuava. This was organized by the youth in Eppavela for the 5th time.
President Maithripala returned to the island this morning following his official visit to Tajikistan. Prior to his departure, the president held discussions with the Russian President Vladimir Putin last evening.
During the meeting, attention was drawn to further strengthen the bilateral relations between Sri Lanka and Russia, as well as regarding several important regional issues. The leaders have also discussed about the sanctions the United States of America has imposed on some of the goods imported from Russia to Sri Lanka. The president's media division said the head of state has invited his Russian counterpart to visit Sri Lanka in the near future.
Now, at present, many powerful nations are exerting pressure on Asian countries, taking into consideration their geopolitical importance and their strategic location. The trade war between India and the United States of America is the latest example for this. India announced retaliatory trade tariffs against the US after Washington withdrew India's preferential trade status.
The move is the latest push by the Trump administration to redress what is considered to be unfair trading relationships with other countries. It has been estimated that the Indian economy will be affected by about $5.5 billion US. Tensions have since been rising between the two countries. Last year, India retaliated against the US tariff hikes on aluminium and steel by raising its own import duties on a range of goods. International media has pointed out that this issue between USA and India goes beyond economic and goes into military affairs and national security concerns as well. President Trump has also threatened to impose sanctions if India purchases oil from Iran and if it goes ahead with plans to buy Russian S-400 anti-aircraft missiles.
It is important to look at the order of how these events unfold and its timing. Another matter that should be given serious attention is the intervention of powerful nations into investments that take place in our own country. In this context, it is important that we revisit the statement made by Ambassador Alice Wells, Acting Assistant Secretary for South and Central Asian Affairs, U.S. Department of State, before U.S. House Representatives.
And we have, through our bilateral and now these quadrilateral sessions that we're doing with India, Japan, and Australia, we're working on sort of practical steps that we can take to coordinate on our finance development. So through the BUILD Act, the practical steps we can take to make sure our assistance programs, whether it's USAID or the Millennium Challenge Corporation, are helping to promote regional connectivity. The President will be meeting with Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Abe in Japan at the G20. And we'll have an opportunity, I think, to again highlight this new partnership of ours.
Does this mean that the US would use nations like India and Japan for matters and/or instances that they are unable to intervene directly?
With that question in mind, let us now look into the contents of the Memorandum of Cooperation of the East Container Terminal of the Colombo port, which was signed between the governments of Sri Lanka, India and Japan at the Temple Trees recently.
The document is titled the Memorandum of Cooperation for the Development of the Colombo South Port. It reads, the three governments share the view that it is of great geostrategic importance for Japan and India to be stakeholders in the operation of the East Container Terminal. The MOC further reads, the government of Japan will endeavour to sign the exchange of notes to provide the yen loan under highly concessional conditions to the government of Sri Lanka at the earliest possible date. The MOC says this could cover payments made by the SLPA prior to the provision of said loan for quick placement of ship-to-shore cranes and rubber-tired gantry cranes. It adds a joint working group meeting will be held among authorities concerned and that they will discuss details of the terminal operating company that will be established, terms and conditions as well as the scope of the yen loan to be provided by the government of Japan, and terms and conditions including duration of cooperation and resolution of differences. Trade unions attached to the port continue to question the move of the East Container Terminal being developed together with Japan and India when the Sri Lanka Port Authority has the ability to develop it on its own. It is clear that these powerful nations are using a principle similar to a ship using any port in a storm. Even though the United States of America removes its GSP status from India when its global interests are threatened, it is clear through the statement of Ambassador Alice Wells that they consider India and Japan to be partners when they please. It should be noted that if the countries in our region, who share a rich and vibrant history, do not comprehend this tactic well, the fate that will befall us will be quite dangerous.
As mentioned in your headlines tonight, the Ministry of Finance said the payment anomalies of over 500,000 pensioners would be removed from the 1st of July.
The monthly salary of the public servants who retired before the 31st of December 2015 would be increased by a minimum of 2,800 rupees and the maximum of 20,000 rupees. Accordingly, the salary of a retired KKS Grade 1 who retired before the said date has been increased by 2,800 rupees. The salary of a retired management assistant Grade 1 has been increased by 5,200 rupees under the proposed new pension scheme. Pension of a teacher in Grade 1 service would be increased by 9,200 rupees and the salary of a retired nursing officer would be increased by 9,200 rupees. The salary of a retired police sergeant would be increased by 4,200 rupees. A retired senior executive officer will get an increase by 16,000 rupees. And the salary of a ministry secretary who retired before the 31st of December 2015 would be increased by 20,000 rupees.
A man who had fallen ill after consuming a packet of controlled substance known as ice while detained in a police prison cell died upon admission to the National Hospital.
The 38-year-old suspect was arrested by the Colombo Crimes Division last evening from Vellampitiya during a raid. Police has also seized 1 gram of narcotics during the arrest. He had suddenly fallen ill while in detention and had informed the duty police officer the fact that he had consumed a packet of ice before he was arrested. He died upon admission to the National Hospital and the post-mortem is scheduled to take place.
The three-wheeler transporting a group of pilgrims to the Athugala Buddha statue in Kiruna toppled off the Athugala rock.
A large number of people arrive in here to worship the Buddha statue on Poya days. A three-wheeler carrying 8 pilgrims who had arrived this morning had fallen off the road when travelling back to the main road. The injured were rushed to the Kiruna Teaching Hospital and the driver of the three-wheeler succumbed to his injuries this afternoon. The deceased is a 38-year-old resident of Maithripala and his 2 children who sustained injuries have been hospitalized.
Still on a local news, a suspect who attempted to break into a financial institution in Horana early this morning was hospitalized after he was shot at by police.
According to police, the suspect is receiving treatment at the Horana-based police under police protection. Police arrived at the scene after the emergency alarm went off when the suspect broke into the institution. Crimes Division police officers arrived at the scene and has found that an individual has entered the building. The suspect had attempted to threaten the police by using a firearm. Police, who immediately reacted to the threat, shot the suspect in the leg. The suspect, who was injured due to the shooting, was identified as a resident of Nimena, Pokunuvita. The weapons which were in possession of the suspect was seized by the police. It was later revealed that the firearm which the suspect used to threaten the police was a plastic replica of a gun.
Indictments were filed against 3 former LTTE cadres for war crimes allegations at the Vaunia High Court. The case will be taken up for examination from the 24th of June.
On the 26th of January 2009, a total of 26 security forces personnel, including 18 Sri Lanka Navy personnel and 8 Sri Lanka Army personnel detained by the LTTE, were shot dead and their bodies were burnt beyond recognition. The incident took place when the LTTE was abandoning their intelligence camp in Pudukudiripu in Mulethiv at a time of defeat. In 2010, the Police Terrorist Investigations Division commenced an investigation over the killing of these prisoners of war. Following an extensive investigation, the TID arrested 3 men for ordering the killing of the prisoners of war and carrying out the killings. The accused are currently in remand custody.
The development work of the Tissamaharama Raja Mahavihara commenced today parallel to the Poson zone in Tissamaharama. The event was held under the patronage of Minister of Housing, Construction and Cultural Affairs and the Deputy Leader of the United National Party, Sajith Premadasa.
The Sangha was a building constructed at a cost of 30 million rupees was offered to the Mahasangha at the Tissa Maharama Dharma Mahavihara today. The widening of the Sandagiri Stupa Road, laying the foundation stones for the new Dhamma Hall, the common facility building and laying the foundation stone for the new Dhamma School building took place under the patronage of the minister. The estimated cost for the project is 113 million rupees.
On this Poson Poya Day, we are hoping to implement the Buddhaput Mapiya Kapakaru scheme, which enables to construct houses for the parents of the Mahasangha as a gesture of respect for the service they have provided towards the Buddha Sasana. Especially yesterday, we laid the foundation stone for the 2500th Udaga Mana. It was a stepping stone for the Buddhaput Mapiya Kapakaru scheme. We will give them the right to live under their own roof.
තමන්ගේම නිවසක් තුළ ජීවත් වීමේ අයිතිය අපි ලබා දෙන්නට කටයුතු කරනවා.
The National Organization to Protect the United National Party held a puja to invoke blessings at the Kirivehera in Katharagama today.
Members from 23 districts of the National Organization to Protect the United National Party were present at religious ceremony, and they wished Sajid Premadasa will get the leadership of the UNP. Former General Secretary of the UNP, Thesathanayaka, also attended the event.
There was a huge desire in the grassroots level of the UNP regarding a change in the party. That's what everyone thinks. We have no need to hide that fact. So it is the United National Party that should decide on selecting the suitable person. There's a clear support for Sajid Premadasa in the grassroots level. So it is the duty of the party to grant the leadership to him.
Up next is the very first segment that looks at the current unstable political climate in the country and the impact of the 19th Amendment to the Constitution.
If the two main political parties come together to govern the country, what will the impact on the country be? It is without doubt that if the two main political parties come together, this will indeed make the country and its people victorious. However, though this took place in the year 2015, a favourable situation as envisaged did not take place. What were the reasons behind this? When the government of consensus was established, were the conditions that were set by both parties honest and fair conditions that did not possess ulterior motives? Were both parties committed to fulfilling the promises that were made? The 1978 Constitution was introduced by President J.R. Jayawardena to ensure political stability in the country. However, the many amendments that were introduced to that Constitution is one of the key factors that has resulted in the current situation. A group of academics argue that the president who will be elected in the next presidential election is unable to hold any ministerial portfolio as a result of the powers being pruned by the 19th Amendment. They claim that this has resulted in the next president that will be elected to be a ceremonial figurehead. The academics who oppose the above argument say that since the president is directly elected through the vote of the entire electorate, and since the president continues to be the head of the cabinet, he or she will hold a significant amount of power and authority constitutionally. A main promise that was given by President Maithripala Sirisena during the 2015 presidential election campaign was that he would eradicate corruption, punish those responsible, and give up authoritarian powers of the executive. President Sirisena established a government of consensus with the two main political parties after his victory. He appointed Ranil Wickremesinghe as the Prime Minister, the leader of the United National Party, which did not have more than 50 seats in Parliament at the time. Soon after taking office, without allowing any time to be wasted, President Sirisena agreed on constitutional changes to tackle corruption and also to relinquish certain powers vested with him. The President had to rely on the Parliament for the said constitutional amendments to be carried out. The Prime Minister and the government came forward with the 19th Amendment to the Constitution for this purpose and presented it to the Parliament. Dr. Jayampati Vikramaratne, M.A. Sumandiran and others who were involved in drafting the said amendment claimed that it would achieve objectives of higher value and that it was drafted meticulously. Is this the truth? Doesn't the fact that the 19th Amendment includes clauses that would not allow the Parliament to be dissolved before 4.5 years signify that there were ulterior motives behind it? The people who were involved in the drafting process have now accepted that this was a poorly drafted amendment. Ranil Wickremesinghe also took steps to support the Mahinda Rajapaksa faction in a bid to weaken President Maithripala Sirisena. Though the UNP vociferously spoke about putting an end to corruption, they did not show any real interest to bring the people who were involved in corruption before 2015 to book. Ranil Wickremesinghe was not able to maintain the trust that is an integral part of a government of consensus. It is no secret that his ambitions were not pure as well. Can anything more be expected from a leader who has sacrificed the aspirations of the party, its popular leaders, the UNP supporters who have placed their trust in the party for over several generations, and even the country? Tomorrow, let us look at the actions of Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe, who from the inception worked towards his own benefit for 25 years after coming into the position first in 1993 through a twist of fate.
And now we take a look at the fate of an indigenous community in Ampara who hold a great historic as well as a cultural importance. A society that lived in harmony with Mother Nature is facing a situation that threatens their very existence.
We undertook a treacherous journey to a rural village in the Pullebadda area in Ampara in search of a group of indigenous community forced to live in a village than in their inherent abode, the forest. The health condition of the Pullebadda indigenous leader is in decline. Amidst this, his children and grandchildren are struck with extreme poverty. After being forced to adapt to the regular society, these people have been hit hard without being able to fulfill their needs, especially hunger. It was way back in the 1940s, a savior named Dr. R.L. Spittle arrived at the area and travelled deep into the jungles in order to provide medications to the Vaddas who suffered with various diseases. Dr. Spittle would have never imagined that these people, whose lives were inextricably intertwined with the forest and the wild animals that lived in it, would one day end up below the poverty line and turn into labourers. From 10 families during the 1940s, the Mahaoya Pullebadda indigenous village today consists around 300 families. A glimpse of hope was blowing in the wind as the Rambakan oil was declared open in 2013. However, it provided to be a white elephant as the villagers were deprived of land ownership to engage in agriculture. Now they are yet again forced, this time to go out and engage in fishing in order to suffice their hunger. A senior villager, D.B. Gunawardhana's only request is to provide them with at least 2 acres of agrarian land. The clear picture on the prevailing situation of this community could be clearly seen at the residence of the deputy leader of the Pullebadda indigenous community, TMB Goba. Can you imagine that 4 families live in this house with a single room?
This is one of the most rural areas in the island, where it is recorded one of the most early civilizations of the Adivasis or the Vaddas, the indigenous people of our country, have lived on for centuries. And this village, the people of this village, the indigenous people, are facing huge difficulties. As you can see, the fire is burning and it's time for dinner. But they have no clue of what their next meal is.
A society that is facing a situation that threatens their very existence are not requesting for luxury villas, comfy sofas or beds. What they ask for is a peaceful place to sleep and a secured future for their next generation.